Robbie, to do what he did, and that was to go out so early, only to be swamped by his big rivals Tom Boonen and Thor Hushovd.
Bit of a tactical mistake. I went just from too far. Basically gave the other guys a lead out, so I'll have to do better next time.
Yeah, I had a really bad run in the finish. The boys tried to get me up there, but I came around the corner in not a very good position, and then just as I started to run it, Robbie Boonen came from the left and took me all the way to the right. I nearly came down, so I scrubbed off a heap of speed there. And then Hushovd did the same thing, so I couldn't have had much worse of a run.
Now, you had a little touchdown, about 40k to go yesterday. How's the knee?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I said I didn't come down very hard, so I was a little bit lucky. But no worries, pulled up okay.
How's the nerves?
Yeah, not too bad. It's just a little bit cool. There's a little bit of wind about, so I'm sure it'll be pretty fast again today. I think we finished with a sort of cross tailwind, so the last 120k I imagine it's going to be flat out. And I guess we start with a bit of a crosswind, so it's going to be pretty nervous at the start again.
Let's take a look at the profile for stage 3, 212 kilometres. The peloton will leave the Vendée region and travel in a northeast direction before arriving into Tours and the long flat sprint up the Avenue de Grammont. Cooler conditions for the riders at this morning's sign-on. And after leaving the Vendée region, the sunflowers of this particular area complemented the castles that dominate the skyline. A three-man breakaway formed, in it multiple Tour de France stage winner and likeable Dutchman Eric Dekker. The colours of Tom Boonen's Quick Step and Robbie McEwen's De Widemont Lotto suggested a possible repeat scenario of 24 hours earlier. Even more so as the tempo was increasing in the peloton with every pedal. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin take up the commentary.
Interesting to look there at Eric Dekker, because although he's never won here in Tours in the Tour de France, in fact at the end of last year he was the winner on this very same avenue, this very same finishing point at the end of one of the one-day World Cup classics, the Paris-Tours race.
Yes, the fastest classic in the world, that one. It's so flat it holds the record for the fastest classic as well, and Eric knows what it's like to win there. So the two riders of the three, very interesting this, that they've made a move very early on. Big gamble for them, I must say, and usually won't succeed, but we'll see.
Nicolas Portal, he knows that he's got a very experienced bike rider with him there, number 53, Eric Dekker. Dekker was national time trial champion back in 1996. He's basically ridden for Dutch teams throughout his whole career. He turned professional back in 1992, almost the same time as Lance Armstrong, because Eric Dekker in fact finished second in the Olympic Games in Barcelona. And I remember the picture of the first three riders across the line in the Olympics at Barcelona, crossing the line with their hands in the air. First was Fabio Casatelli and second was Eric Dekker.
That's right, so I remember it like it was yesterday. Unfortunately it wasn't. This is the main field, and these are the teams of the sprinters yet again. As we watch the riders just keep the tempo nicely in order.
So I think, looking at the fact that the main field is switched across, there's Robbie McEwen, Australian national champion, two-time winner of the green jersey classification, moving to the front of the main field. And there's the wearer of the green jersey this year, Tom Boonen, a former teammate of Lance Armstrong. We certainly realized very early on he was going to be a good bike rider, Tom Boonen, because he was third in Paris-Roubaix when he was just 21 years of age. But now he's won himself that classic, as well as the favorite one of all the Belgians, the Tour of Flanders. Back with the leaders is Portal. Bertogliati on the front, a last-minute replacement of Inigo Cuesta.
At the moment, we should remind you of this, in fact, because of the time gap over the field, the race leader virtual of the Tour de France is Rubens Bertogliati, because he started the day only 2 minutes 13 seconds behind. The gap is now 2 minutes and 48. He's already taken 8 seconds in bonuses at those sprint points, and the third and final sprint of the day, they must be getting very, very close to it now, because that's at 75 kilometres to go, and we're about 76, 77 kilometres left here. There's Le Château de Coudray, Montpensier, a little bit further along the road now. This is a slightly different chateau, and we think that's around about the 15th century, that particular model, so it's almost 300 years older than Montpensier Castle, which is a little bit further down the road. They are 11 kilometres from the top of the small and final climb of the day, which is about 6.5 miles. If they can stay away, then I'm pretty sure Decker will get the required points to give him the lead.
I don't know if you remember back in 2001, Eric Decker, just sitting at the back there, he was in the breakaway in the Amstel Gold Race with a man by the name of Lance Armstrong. The team management, Eric Decker is such a great bike rider because the team management, they absolutely wanted to win. It's a Dutch team. They had to win the Amstel Gold Race. Team manager came up to Eric Decker and said, "You've got to sit on Armstrong." He wouldn't do it. He absolutely refused to sit on Armstrong, and they had a two-man sprint at the end, and Eric Decker got the win just by a couple of centimetres. But he was an honest, straight bike rider on that occasion. I gave him a lot of respect for that.
And I think Lance did too, because, you know, when the boss orders you to do something, only a brave man goes against the orders, and if you don't get the result in the end, you might get the sack instead.
It's a big risk. It was a big risk that Eric Decker took, getting at that time the wrath of the team manager, who was known as Jan Raas.
Oh, there's an interesting move. He's just stretching out. This is Jan Kirsipuu. He won in 1999 down in Chalon, where we were for the start yesterday, and that kept him in the yellow jersey for a while till Lance Armstrong asked for it back and took it and never gave it back to anybody. There's a little stretch for you. Chance to see the cleats on the shoes. They're like ski bindings. They lock into the pedals. If you're unlucky enough to fall off, they do tend to release automatically. Otherwise, you go along the road still stuck to your bike. It's going to be an interesting arrival today. There is no doubt about that. I think after the climb, the big chase will start. Tom Bonan here, and Robbie McEwen still alongside him, look, keeping a very close eye. Robbie's a great tactician. He's not going to let Tom out of his sight. Tom knows he's there. He knows he's the man to beat. Oh, and Jan Ullrich is moving up through the field here now, taking a better interest in the front and beginning to cruise. He's looking good today now.
I think Ullrich has managed to turn himself around. He was very depressed after his performance in the opening day's individual time trial. But he said the problem was that everybody around him was depressed because of his crash the day before. And all they talked about was his crash. All they talked about was his injury. And he said the most important thing for me on that occasion was to try and concentrate on the time trial. He did, unfortunately, as well, have the nasty situation of having to start 1 minute in front of a flying Armstrong. And that certainly added, I think, to the blow to his morale. But he's turned himself around. He's a great champion. Don't discount him.
That must have been horrible to start a minute ahead of Lance Armstrong in a time trial. It was a great carrot for the Texan. We're just over a kilometre inside the final mile to the top of the climb now. There's no real climbs. There's only little bumps. And there's the peloton. They're not going to get on before the climb, but I don't think it'll be too long afterwards. So it's up to Decker now. First or second will give him the lead in the King of the Mountains. 1.5 minutes the gap, and the peloton are not yet ready to finish it all off and chase them down. Look at this. They're looking at other people to set the pace.
They certainly are, but we will start to get that little bit more organised. It looked like Jens Voigt on the front, that bouncy, punchy style of the German rider on Team CSC. And he's just trying to make sure that there's a status quo and there's no moving away by these three leaders as we get closer to that climb, because he's trying to make sure that he keeps Dave Zabriskie right in the front of this bike race and in the yellow jersey. That's where we're heading to right now. Just in a couple of kilometres or so, it's going to be the Côte de la Taconnière. It's a kilometre climb. It climbs up to 106 metres or 330 feet. Not very much of a gradient, though, because it's just 3.2%.
Well, we're on it, I think.
33 kilometres to go.
But it's a good one for Decker then to take the lead in the King of the Mountains, a competition he knows he can never win when the real climbers of the Tour start to get to grips with the big mountains of the Tour, which often are more than 32 kilometres high. But Decker now knows he's a sprint away from picking up the polka dot jersey, and he's had it before. Not for very long, but he knows what it's like. He'll get the new version now if he can make it this time around. And here comes the sprint. Decker's gone. First or second's good enough, and it looks like Battagliati says you can have first maximum points. Bad news though for Thomas Voigtläp, because Decker has not left it to the count back. He's now a point in the lead in that competition. He's just radioing there back to the management saying it's all in the bag. I'll be standing by for the podium later. Well, we're commentating to you at the finishing line. I just look up the straight here and I can see all the flags except the French flags. There's an Irish flag flying. Well, I'm confident there'll be no Irish winner today because there's no Irishman in the race, but there's also American and Australian flags flying proudly at the finish.
So, as they approach the 21-kilometre to go mark, it's still hovering at the 1 minute and 10-second margin. That's a dodgy. That's why you don't want to ride in the middle of the group. You need to ride at the front. There's a narrowing in the main field there. I think almost everybody got through safely because everybody was waiting for something to happen as the main field were forced to go through that narrowing in the road there. But looking up, it doesn't look as if anybody went down, and certainly there'll be a few heart rates went up. And look at the Rabobank rider there. He saw the accident happening, saying, well, I'm not going through the middle of that. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side and try and ride safely through the field. Obviously, one or two of those riders learning from the handbook of Lance Armstrong, who did exactly just that last year.